Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. And put a couple of my dice away from doing some game not traveled videos a minute ago. This is the BattleTech, Classic BattleTech Handbook from House Davion. So this is a Fan Pro / WidKid game product. And this was, I was lucky enough to get this one off the internet 6-7 months ago for about the same price, $35 I believe is what I paid for it. And it was great. This is, as you probably know, this is a series, of course. The original series, which I've already done videos on there in my repertoire of 950 goddamn videos. So this would be the updated version as of that particular time. The Forced Succession War is long gone. The clan invasion's over with for the most part, and the FedCom Civil War is raging and or petering out. And this is focused in that era. So we're talking the 3050s, 3060s, and of course it goes in series with this one here. And I think I already did the House Davion version. I don't quote me on that because actually I'm getting behind. I got 3 or 4 up here that I've read and gone through that I have to do videos on yet. And anyway, so this I've spent a couple weeks reading this off and on in my work truck, and between, because like I said, I have a tendency to bounce back and forth for different stuff. I've got a BattleTech novel sitting in the bedroom next to my bedstand. I got several in the bathroom. This was in the truck. I brought it home yesterday, so I have to take something and putting it back in the truck tomorrow, so I got something new to read. The novel I'm working on in there off the top, it is a Clan Jade Falcon novel, and it's Diana going after her pride, gaining her Adian pride's namesake, Falcon Rising, I think. Anyway, it's actually one of the better ones. I know there's a lot of people out there not a fan of the clans in general, not a fan of the novels that revolve around the clans. That's the personal preferences on their part. I found them entertaining and, more important, insightful, because it really gives you an inside view of clan life and clan politics and how the clans function, at least how 1 or 2 specific clans do, because obviously all the clans are different. It's just like all the houses are quite similar and quite different. So in a lot of aspects, this is just a updated version of the first book that was put out by Facet, which is fine because we want that. We like these to have evolutions. I understand that Catalyst is working on a new round of these type of books. I'm looking forward to seeing them come out if that's what is on the agenda. A lot of what's in here is pretty much echoing the original stuff, but it does include quite enough new information and new material to make it valuable to have, because obviously it's an evolution. In a way, this is a history book for House Davion. That's something a lot of people don't take into account or don't consider. That the source books, or in this case, the handbook for the houses, is the house history and house information that's valuable. So I mean, it's a matter of how you how you look at it. And it goes through their history and the various succession wars and things like this, stuff that's well established. If you've been in the game long enough, if you've been in it as long as I have, you know a lot of this stuff. So about it like the back of your hand. But then we also got into a few elements that I had not been privy to. These books came out, were published just after I dialed out of the game, which is kind of, I didn't realize that the Fan Pro was working so hard to actually bring something forward, that there was a couple years there that it was a freaking hot mess. And I'm trying to find out exactly what year this book was published. Now, sometimes they have, you gotta look for them because they're not. 2007. So this came out 4 years. Because I stopped buying BattleTech's books and stuff in 2000. Well, I was still buying some of the Dark Age novels into 2008, 2009, but I didn't buy any of the source books because, well, frankly, I didn't know a lot of them were available. That was a failure on my part, and part of my circumstances and things like that. I have 900. Before I post more videos, I currently, right now, have 950 videos on my channel, which is quite a lot of videos. I mean, it really is staggering just how many freaking videos. Now, quite a lot of them that would be considered chaff, or they were specific, so they were oriented towards certain things. But for the most part, it's a lot of game material, a lot of various game systems, a lot of history, a lot of my opinions and ideas on how to game, how to run things, how things should be ran. The games and various games and evolutions of the games and things like this. A lot of time and effort's gone into this, and it probably would not surprise me by this time next year, if not sooner. I'm averaging 3 videos a week, so we could hit 1,000 videos by next spring. And I'm already thinking ahead a little bit to what kind of video I would like to do on that 1,000th entry. So I'll have to keep thinking about that. But I was really pleased. I mean, there's some areas I glazed over. I mean, the history of the past. Like I said, these are history books. So when we talk about the things that went down in the second and first succession wars and things like that, I kind of glazed over them because they're just repetitive of the new stuff or the older stuff, and it may be rewritten in some ways. I'm not going to sit down with the older material next to each other and go line by line and see if it was just carbon copied over, because a lot of times you rewrite things. This is how history gets rewritten, but they do some a lot of work into that stuff. It's when we get into the later things that we really start getting some interest in stuff. So we get into the quote, the new era. Now, see that at the end of the third succession war, the fourth succession war, the FedCom forming. We all know how that all plays out. The War of 3039, Kerensky's vengeance. So we see the invasion of the clans. And so on and so forth, the alliance, and then the FedCom's alliance and dissolution, conflict, the FedCom civil war. So there was a bit of things in there that were new to me, which I enjoyed. I really did. I went back. It's one of the reasons it took a couple of weeks, because I went back and reread them several times. And there's other things like the planetary. So I didn't reread these because I've read them in various forms, and if I need them from a game reference source, then I would come back and do a more depth reread based on whatever game I'm playing or my need for them at that specific time. I mean, it's just kind of that's the whole point. They're a history book, but they're also a reference book. And I'm sure you know that. So we get into some of the minor noble houses, and I like that this book took the original material a step further and included more of the minor houses that make up the Federated Suns and the various houses individually. And it just reinforces what I said over and over again, that everything's interconnected and everybody is interdependent. And so for every house regiment of troops that we can put on a field and battle with and use as our icons or whatever, there's 5 minor houses that also have military forces. So House Cunningham, for example, might not have 2 regiments or 5 regiments of regimental combat teams and other sort of 20 other conventional military unit commands that's available to them, if like the Sandoval's might have or the Hassocks would have. But the fact is that they still have forces, and those forces accumulate, but we tend to ignore that. So when an invasion of a major planet occurs, when New Robinson's invaded by House Creta, on New Robinson there are numerous minor houses and minor nobles who have household guards, who have military units. Combined, all them together could be 3, 4, or 5 regiments worth of troops. Yes. And I would say second or third line troops, yes. And then there's the numerous military or corporations that also have corporate defense forces and stuff on the planet. So there could be another regiment to 2 regiments. So potentially the planetary defenders, if they were coordinated and were able to work together on a grander scale, the House Creta would have had to land with 20 or 30 regiments to take New Robinson, unless they were able to draw off a lot of those resources away. And how do they fight? Well, aside from us, us suspending disbelief and ignoring the glaring plot holes and plot armor and stuff that throughout all game systems, it's easy to, in our mind, to justify things. A lot of these minor nobles are not going to get involved in the grander scheme of things unless it's on their front doorstep, because why would they want to sacrifice all what military forces they have, in basically a meat grinder? They're not going to do that, or they're going to recognize that they're totally outclassed. But it's a given that since the Koreans took the planet, those forces had to get engaged. They either had to disband and turn in their troops, their mechs and their weapons, or the Koreans crushed them. And there was numerous after battles that were fought that we don't have stories for. And it's within those venues that you and me and Dupree, the player, get to go hog wild, in my personal opinion, right? So what do I know? Just personal opinion. So we get into more details on the Federated Suns government and their social systems and things like this. And this is more of an academic interest because it has less bearing on the play itself, and definitely very little bearing on tabletop wargaming, but from the nuances of the grander story, the grander scheme, the fact that what our little tabletop engagement is a piece of a massive puzzle. That's the allure, the attraction. And in order for that allure and attraction to exist, this sort of material needs to be present, right? And existing. We love it, and we would love to, and we love to see more. And the artwork is definitely improved. You can see there's more money in the manufacturing process. There's more talented individuals coming to the fore. We are definitely moved past the early crude FASA era stuff. And some of the stuff that the German companies were making are kind of nutty. But it's my understanding that the Fan Pro WizKid era also includes some German corporation era stuff. You have to talk to me about it. I mean, I've heard about it. I think Big Red's channel was talking about it a couple times off and on. I love Dred's channel because there's so much interaction and conversation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of repetitives, but that's to be expected because new people come and ask the same questions over and over. God bless Red for putting up with that crap, because hey, it is what it is. But on the same venue, a lot of things don't get discussed, and some things get passed over. And it's hard to have a serious conversation in a short burst format in a chat room full of other people that are all doing their own thing. That's one of the reasons I do the videos I do, because it allows me to get my personal preferences and opinions and thoughts on what I'm reading and what I'm seeing in this beloved game out there in a hopefully understandable way. I know that I have issues with stuttering and I babble occasionally and I go off on the tangents because that is me, right? If I ever win the lottery, I'll step this up like a level that'll put everybody to shame. But I need to have a lot of money to do that. I'm just saying. So the artwork really, like I said, improvement. It gives us a lot of insights. And one picture is worth 1,000 words if it's a good picture. If it's a crappy picture, it's worthless. In my personal opinion. So we get basic things like the uniforms, insignia, and stuff. And what does this have any bearing on the game itself? Nothing. It's fluff and filler, but it's great fluff and filler because once again it expands the sandbox that we play in. So we get into this section on society and culture, peoples and culture. All this stuff is pretty much rehashed from the original material and a little bit more up to date. Plus, it also brings into current morals and ideas and concepts that may be going on in the Federated Suns. And it took me a little bit to read through it. I had to kind of grind through some of it. Some of it's very dry, but it's a history book. History books tend to be dry, but there's still always some nice and interesting things to find. And one of the things I liked in here is they kind of expanded on the concept of how the education system in the Federated Suns is lackadaisical at best, and how some of the ways that the Federated Suns have tried to adjust and to take care of it and how they deal with it. It's always nice to see it. That's no bearing on the tabletop war game at all, but it's great stuff. And we see some of the things like faith and things like this, which I've never had a whole lot of use for in the game itself. But once again, it's motivational material, backfiller. It's just like corporations and corporate entities and things like this. It adds flavor and depth to the story, to the game. So we talk about the medical systems, crime and punishment. They really went all out with that. There's quite a bit. There's a number of pages dealing with the crime and punishment section. The national economy. Once again, we actually have somebody that put a little effort into trying to make the economic system of these houses make sense to me. The industries are expanded, so we have a section with a lot more industry in it. And why is that important? Well, it's not just enough to know that this company makes, I don't know, booze, and this company makes autocannons, but every one of these corporations are significant in that they may have a defense force that you may represent someday if you choose to go down that rabbit hole, or might have to have a conflict. If your force is sent to raid that planet's, this in particular industrial companies, factories on this planet to get those latest, their storehouse full of autocannons as a raid, well, having a little bit of information on this is going to make it much more plausible and entertaining. We also see a massive critical improvement in here. I was really pleased when I came across this, and I had to go back, because we're talking about the aerospace industry, more important, the starship industry, that the technology and things that we see from the Helm Memory Core and the work of NASA's for so long comes into play, and we start seeing improvements where they flat out stipulate that a lot of the problems prior. So when we look at the 3025 era, the era I started with, and some of you did, it was a hot mess. Everything was, important. Salvage was crucial. It was hard to get brand new equipment, and it was supposed to be hard. And everybody had a mismatch of stuff. So when I see the buy-in, the battle value system that we have, I still rail against that in part because it doesn't feel like it's conducive. It doesn't feel to me. It feels more like a video game thing and less like a BattleTech thing from the initial concept of the game. And that's just my personal opinion. I just don't like it personally. I don't like the way you cherry pick stuff for your battles. I mean, to me, it just reeks as, I don't know, being unrealistic from how much we want to be immersed in the game to take that sort of thing and make it less realistic. Now, the war chest thing makes more sense to me, where we have, here's how much money you have, what can you acquire with it? Because then you can field an outfit. But once you field your outfit, what you have is what you have, unless you acquire more. Because that's kind of how it works, especially if you're mercenary. But it works that way for all the houses. But more importantly, it shows a lot of old technology. There was a lot of planets that were in dire straits. Their water purification systems are failing. Their terraforming, the machinery that kept the planet terraformed was failing or had already failed. Jump ship construction was almost non-existent. Only a dozen or so jump ships each year were being produced, which is really hard to swallow when you sheer volume of space involved and sheer amount of resources needed to be moved around alone, let alone military units and civilian transports, etc., etc. But to see that this resurgence sees a lot of old shipyards rebuilt or reopened and repaired and manufacturing facilities. So even into the after the Dark Age and into the current era, we still see that the houses are actually economically, or not, maybe not economically, but technologically speaking, far better off than they were 100 years earlier in 3025, which is what we want. We do want to see progression. We want to see some growth. It's a great thing, and the fact I ran across it, and I should have marked it down so I could actually go into it. But the fact that they were discussing the additions of repairs, it helps justify some of the stuff that I now see going on in the game in my mind. All right. And then, of course, I really loved to see these additional things like the creatures and just more of this alien stuff that just reinforces the fact that we are living in a science fiction or a futuristic space-based, world, if you wish. It's some great stuff. I mean, right? Got some new train, got some new vehicles, got another satellite, which I found great. Generic vehicles, wet water naval vessels, which I don't think I ever had a campaign where I actually put any of these things into the field, which, you know, it is what it is. I played plenty of battle games. I played plenty of war games that were naval based, so I understand how that stuff works, but I've never done it in BattleTech and tried to apply it. So this was an awesome read, and I look forward to going back probably in 5 or 10 years and rereading it again, because that's what I tend to do with this stuff. There's a lot of beautiful information, and I'm proud to set it up there on my shelf, and it would be on my shelf right next to the original FASA version, and if CGL comes out with one, I'll put one right now, because they belong together, because it's a sequence of evolution. It's just my opinion on that. Anyway, hope you guys have a great week. Till next time, this is Rick.